Hello, hi, good morning.
Yes, good morning. Glad to join and good to see you. Sorry for joining late. As you know that here we had connection problem. I don't know what is wrong here.
That's okay. So let's start our conversation.
Yes. And we will start our conversation here. We have some participants that they have written some best points from the given book that you had given, and they have studied the book and they have written the best points of the book and share the best points. And sorry for joining late. Yes, we're ready to say something. Mr. Saifullah, come here and share your opinion.
In the name of Almighty Allah, who is the most gracious, the most merciful. First of all, I would like to present the best gift of Muhammad, peace be upon him. That is called Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I am Saifullah, son of Asadullah, one of the students of Salim Afghan Educational Center. I am from Afghanistan. I read this short offering by Hosseini, an author I very much admire, and a matter of minutes. And the title is the word prayer. And it is a prayer to child a people young, people who will never know the country of their birth, Syria. Without bombs and not salvation, not the vibrant place it had been. I pray to all people for compassion, understanding, for little hope, for the refugees fleeing for their life. The illustrations are beautifully run from color to black and white. It is indeed a homage to the many who have lost their lives to the sea, fleeing our entire country. Among the 176 who did or went missing, attempting this journey was a 3-year-old named Alan Kurdi, and Hosseini wrote this short, beautifully piece for them. Thanks from the bottom of my head from your attention.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on the book. Anyone else from your side who would like to come up and talk about the sea prayer?
Yes. Here we have another participant to come here and share his opinion. Who is ready? Mr. Zamid, come here. In the name of
Can you please sit closer to the laptop so we can hear you properly?
In the name of Almighty Allah, who is the most gracious, the most merciful. First of all, I would like to present the best gift of Muhammad, peace be upon him, which is called Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Khalid Hosseini was born in Kabul, Afghanistan in 1965. His father was diplomat with the Afghan Foreign Ministry, and his mother taught Farsi. And his studied at a large high school in Kabul in 1970. The Foreign Ministry sent his family to Tehran, where his father worked for the Afghan embassy. They lived in Tehran until 1973, at which point they returned to Kabul in July of 1973. And the night, Hosseini's youngest brother was born. The Afghan king Zahir Shah was over the own in uploaded cop by the kings. Question Dawood Khan at the time Hosseini was in the fourth grade and was already drawn to poetry and prose. He read a great deal of the Persian poetry as well as Farsi. Translation of novels Trangen from Alice and Wonderland to McCain. Thanks from the bottom of my heart for your attention.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Anyone else from your side who would like to come up and talk about this book?
Yes, thank you for inviting. As you know that we have all read the book, and the book was really interesting. I have written something to read it here. The book, a short, powerful, illustrated book written by Khalid Hosseini in response to the current refugee crisis. See, prayer is composed in the form of a letter from a father to his son. The father reflects in the dangerous sea crossing that lays before them. It is also a vivid portrait of their life in home Syria before the war and of that city's swift transformation from a home into a deadly war zone. Employed to write this story by the haunting image of young Alan Kurdi, the 3-year-old Syrian boy whose body washed up on the beach in Turkey in September 2015. Hosseini hopes to pay tribute to the millions of families like Kurds who have been splintered and forced from whom they were in persecution, and he will donate author proceeds from this book to the UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, and the Khalid Hosseini Foundation to help fund life-saving relief efforts to help refugees around the globe. Hosseini is also a good will in way to enhancer and the founder of the Khalid Hosseini Foundation. Non-profit provides humanitarian assistance to the people of Afghanistan. These were the main points which we had taken from the book, and we have all read the book, and the book was absolutely great. It was great story about a father to his son, and it was really enjoyable for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving us your opinions about the book. So, I would like to add on to this conversation that even though the book is really small, the story is in the form of a poem, it's in the form of a letter that a father is writing to his son who are fleeing Syria, who are fleeing their homeland, who are fleeing their home in search of another place that can provide them safety. So it's also based on a true story that Khalid Hosseini, that we all heard about in 2015 when Syria was going through a war, and the people living in Syria, they had to flee their home and find another land to call it a safe place for their survival. They were looking for a place for survival. And during that journey that people took from the sea, there were many people who drowned in the sea, who lost their lives, and a child's body was washed up on the Mediterranean Sea at the shores of Turkey, and it all shook up the world. That was a true incident that happened, which inspired Khalil Hosseini to write this book. And I would like to go on that incident, that when all of this was happening, and unfortunately and sadly, the world is also again going through the same crisis. And we have also gone through this issue, Pakistan and Afghanistan. We both have been hit by such circumstances where people had to leave their own country and find another place for survival. So I would like to share. I would like to know that what you guys felt about while reading this book. That it touches upon a topic which is very close to our hearts, especially Afghanistan. That during the Soviet invasion, during the Talibanization of Afghanistan, people also left Afghanistan to find another homeland. Just like the writer of this book, Khalid Hussein, he was also a refugee. He also left Afghanistan during 1980s, and he went to during 1960s, 70s, and 80s, and he went to America as a refugee. So, what do you guys think about that? The very human element, the very real element of this book. I'm sorry, your mic is muted. Yeah.
Can you repeat your question? Can you please that we didn't hear what you said? Here we have slow connection. We don't know what you say.
So I'm just asking about your opinion that while reading the book talks about a very real situation that both of our countries went through and even are still going through. Afghanistan was people left Afghanistan as refugees during the 1980s, during Soviet invasion, and during when Taliban's they took over the country. So I would want to. I just want to know your thoughts that while reading this book, what did you think about that? Because it talks about a really real circumstances that really a very real issue that our both of our countries or both of our people are going through.
Ma'am, I would like to say something on this.
Sure, please go ahead.
The struggle, uh, the struggle that Mr. Khalid Hosseini had at his time, and when the Soviet Union invaded the Afghanistan, it was a tough time for the Afghani people, and people had to move the other countries. And in this book, he has showed the sentiments, the emotions that he has attached with his own country, and he has shared so many things that are worth readable. And our students, even though they have come to know that how difficult situation people go through in their life, and when the time arrives of the war time arrives, it is a difficult time for any country, for any people who are living there, because it is a time of mass murdering and so many things, the activities that are harmful for the human lives. So it is difficult to leave your own country and settle in other countries. Mr. Khalid Hosseini showed his experience, his sentiments, his emotions, etc. So I think overall it is a very good book, and our students really enjoyed it. And this is a new experience for them. They have come to know about so many new things, so many challenges, and we have already shared the recorded videos to you, ma'am. Actually, it is a COVID era, and people are a little bit worried, and we have to also follow the SOPs strictly. And we called our students in early hours in the morning, and we recorded their videos, and we have sent those videos to you, ma'am. So I hope when you see such videos, you will come to know that how our students have also learned the things. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for mentioning that and reminding me as well. So I'm going to share my screen now, and we can see we can watch the videos from our students in Larkana. So please let me know when you guys are able to see my video. See my screen actually.
Hi,
So can you guys hear it as well?
I am Sani.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
All right.
Hi, I am Sanya from class 8. Today I want to share some comments about Sea Prayer that is written by Khalid Hosseini and illustrated by Don William. I have already read this book, Sea Prayer, that is interesting. Sea Prayer is a beautifully illustrated, a short story where a father reminisces with his sleeping son in his arms.
Properly.
Yes,
I'm sorry, I
yes,
lost
we
my
heard.
internet. I'm sorry, I lost my internet connection. So I'm back now. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
All right, I'm going to share my screen again.
Yes, we hear.
Sorry about that.
They are refugees waiting for in his arms. They are refugees waiting for a next stage of their journey. Father recalls how he and his brothers enjoyed their summer at the grandfather's farmhouse, knowing that his son not won't able to share this same experience. They are fleeing from Syria, but it could any one of several countries. There are many reasons that people seek easy than others than on. For example, religious persecution, war, violence, starvation, slavery, etc. Are seeking a better life for themselves and their families. Sadly, often their refugees do not reach their destinations. Khalid Hosseini was inspired to write this story by the news and photos. Many of us read and saw the little boy that drowned and crossing Mediterranean Sea in 2015. Indeed, this book is eye-catching and give outstanding vocabulary about the poems and literatures. Thank you so much.
My name is Ikrar. Today I am going to tell you about Sea Prayer book that is written by Khalid Hosseini and illustrated by Don Williams. A short, powerful, illustrated book written by beloved novelist Khalid Hosseini in response to the current refugee crisis. Sea Prayer is composed in the form of a letter from a father to his son on the eve of their journey watching. Over his sleeping son, the father reflects on the dangerous sea crossing that lies before them. It is also a vivid portrait of their life in Homs, Syria before the war and of their cities. Swift transformation from a home into a deadly war zone. Impelled to write this story by the hunting image of young Elan Kurdi, the 3-year-old Syrian boy whose body washed upon the beach in Turkey in September 2015. Hosseini hopes to pay tribute to the millions of families like Kurdis who have been splintered and forced from home by war and persecution, and the will donate other proceeds from this book to the UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, and the Khalid Hosseini Foundation to help fund life-saving relief efforts to help refugees around the globe. Khalid Hosseini is one of the most vividly read writer in the world with more than 55 million copies. To his to his novel sold worldwide in more than 70 countries. Hosseini is also a goodwill envoy to the UNHCR and the founder of the Khalid Hosseini Foundation, a non-profit that provides humanitarian assistance to the people of Afghanistan. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Fayaz Ali and today I am going to tell you about Sea Prayer book that is written by Khalid Hussain and illustrated by Dame Williams. It is only flow, though is it incredibly short length written in the form of a touching letter from the refuge father to his child on the to his child. Other proceeds from this book will be donated by Khalid Husseini Foundation in the hopes of giving the house last all to war and persecution a better life. CPR's father's reflection over his sleeping son on the dangerous journey across the sea that lies before them. It is also an account of their life in Homs, Syria before the war and of the city's swift transfer from a home into a deadly war zone. The book is beautifully illustrated by British painter Dame Williams. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Savera. Today I am going to tell you about Sea Prayer book that is written by Khalid Hosseini and illustrated by Don Williams. Sea Prayer is a beautifully illustrated short story where a father reminisces with his sleeping son in his arms. There are refugees waiting for the next stage of their journey. The father recalls how he and his brother enjoyed their summers at their grandfather's farmhouse, knowing and that his son wanted to be able to share this same experience. They are feeling from Syria, but it could be anyone, several countries. There are many seasons that people seek refugees in countries other than their own religious persecutions, war, and violence. Thanks.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Atawala. Today I am going to tell you about Sea Prayer. That is written by Khalid Hosseini and illustrated by Don Williams. The story is narrated by an unnamed man who was born and raised in Syria. Raised in Syria. As a boy, he grew up in the He grew up in the countryside near the Syrian city of Homs. He lived in a farmhouse with his brothers, and parents. And he enjoyed a boyhood of peace and contentment. He is now married and has a son named Marwan. The Syrian Civil War began when Marwan was a toddler. The narrator bemoans the Marwan that fact due to Marwan's age. Marwan will likely have no memory of few peaceful years following Marwan's death.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Kashish. Today I am going to tell you about Sea Prayer that is written by Khalid Hussain and illustrated by Dan Williams. I read this chart offering by Hussaini, an author I very much admire in a matter of minutes. In the title is the word prayer, and it is a prayer to a child people, young people who will never know the country of their birth. Syria without bombs, towns in ruins and starvation. Not the vibrant place it had been. A prayer to all people for compassion and understanding, for a little hope, for the refugee feeling for their life. The illustrations are beautiful, but from color to black and white. It is indeed a homage to what have lost to the sea, filling a one-ton country among the 4,176 who died or went missing at a This journey was a 3-year-old named Elan Kurdi, and Husseini wrote this beautiful piece for them. Thank you.
So these were some of the videos for students from Larkana, and they explained the book really well. Thank you so much, Sir Vakar and Sir Asif, for contributing to this project and making your students a part of this project and making them read these books as well and making these very well explained videos. So Alia, would you like to contribute to this conversation?
Hi everyone, my name is Alia Tayyebi, and I and Hurmat curate these conversations for book clubs across borders, the project that is currently being hosted in Afghanistan, but was supposed to be a project between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Thank you, Larkana, for sending these lovely testimonies. And we hope and pray that the students in Laghman got to be introduced to their counterparts in Pakistan and understand how children in Pakistan read books, absorb books, and how they kind of interact with this kind of literature. We truly believe that reading books of the types that are mostly part of our project actually encourages children to engage more with their own society, their own culture, their own geographical boundaries, and not only just that, but also look at the region as a whole. Because as a region, we need to understand each other, and by understanding each other, we can not only tolerate each other, but actually benefit each other. So the book that is under discussion today is, of course, Khalid Hussaini's beautiful new book, which is called The Sea Prayer. The book, more than a work of literature, is more of a sort of engagement with our visual side of creativity, because there are these beautiful illustrations that talks of a story of a small of a father who has had to flee from Syria and find safe voyage for him and his son. And as we're all aware, the war that broke out in Syria created a huge influx of outmigration, where people, in order to save their lives and find protection, had to leave their country of origin, and a lot of them had to leave by sea. Unfortunately, a large number of people who were trying to find safe havens in neighboring countries were never able to reach safely. A lot of the ships and boats were capsized. Most of these boats were filled beyond their capacity, and the way the migration took place was very inhuman. And then we all know about the current political climate, where a lot of countries do not want to take in migrants because they believe that these migrants come in and actually cause civic unrest in their structured societies. So when this book was actually something that Mr. Husseini felt that he really needed to write about, and it was actually, propelled, his whole idea for writing the book was propelled by a photograph of a Syrian child who had washed on the shores of Britain, and the child's corpse had washed up on the shore. And this was something that created a massive social media wave, where from newspapers to televisions to all kinds of social media like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, everybody was sharing these images because it was a jolt for our humanity. That these were not just others, but these were innocent children who were losing their lives, who could not find safe shelter. And as a father, Mr. Husseini felt that this was something that really, really resonated with him on two angles. Number one, because he himself had to escape Afghanistan and find safe haven, first in Pakistan and then in the United States. And then he also felt that as a person who has experienced war and the trauma of war, what it feels like to be helpless on a personal angle, and then also to be helpless as a parent. So this book was actually something that he felt he needed to write because he wanted his children to understand what being human is all about. So this book is something that pays homage to that. I hope you all, as you were going through the book, you were keeping the plight of various people, which are constantly, unsafe because of the disquiet caused by various factions of war within or from outside, and keep in your prayers people who are going through such unrest, like Afghanistan itself is going through, like Pakistan often experience now and about, where we see most of the modern world, especially the Middle East and South Asian region, being ravaged by war. And so this book I feel is a very, very important read. And if you all would like, I have an interview of Mr. Husseini where he speaks about why he wrote this book that I would like to share with all of you. So Laghman, I would like to have a few interaction from your side. So if any students would like to come and comment on the book, and then I would like to share my screen and talk and share the video link where Mr. Husseini himself is talking about the book.
Laghman, anyone from your side who would like to come up and talk about the book?
Yes, we have another participant here. He wants to say something about the given book. Who's reading? Yes.
In the name of Allah, my name is Kamran, son of Muhibullah. I'm from Afghanistan. Now I want to share my idea of this book. I am really not sure how to describe this book. It's letter from a father to his son. The night before they leave their were torn country for a suffer place. It's not great, and the father is terrified because it involves a great deal of danger, especially for the portion of the trip that's by boat. You can feel his fear and at the sometimes his knowledge that there's no real good choice. Living is dangerous, and there's a very real choice that one or all of them will leave, but staying isn't a good option either. If you stay, you will almost definitely there. There aren't any soft choice. Thanks from the bottom of my head from your attention.
Any other participant from your side who would like to come up and talk about the book?
Sorry, ma'am. Repeat the words, miss.
I'm just asking Laghman if anyone else from their side who would like to come up and talk about the book. If
Yes,
not,
yes,
then
we have.
oh, sure, sure.
Yes, okay. Come here.
In the name of Al-Meet, I want to present you with the big and beautiful gift of our Prophet, Hazrat Muhammad, peace be upon him, which is called Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I want to share my topic. What is the message of the sea prayer? Right in the front of the letter, sea prayer is a father revelation as he watches our his sleeping son of the dangerous generous across the sea that is leave before them. It is also the account of the deer live in whom Surya before the war and of that is city swift turn of the formation from whom into identity war zone. Thank you for button your attention.
Any other student left from your side who would like to come up and talk about the book? If not, then Alia I'll go back to Alia and then she will share a video by Khalid Hussaini.
Yes, yes, it is about to finish. We would like to go to them.
Sure, thank you. So Alia, over to you.
Okay, great.
As you wish.
You have somebody who'd like to talk? Laghman, would one of your students like to come and talk?
No. They are about to finish, and we have not another person to come here and say something. They were and they finished.
Okay, lovely. So I will just share my screen and share something very fascinating.
Hey guys, this is Khalid Hussaini, and I'm in New York at Facebook headquarters, and I'm in town to promote my new illustrated book called Sea Prayer, and to take some of your questions. So I hope you'll enjoy. Let me get right to the first question, which comes from Monica, who wants to know what inspired me to write this book. And so Sea Prayer was originally written for a small fundraiser that I attended last year. It's a brief illustrated book, but it's a small book with a big message. It was inspired by a tragedy that happened 3 years ago, the drowning of a young Syrian refugee named Alan Kurdi. When I saw that photograph, like millions of people around the world, I was really devastated. And I never really forgot about it. And so when I was asked to speak about refugees at this fundraiser, I wanted to pay tribute to what had happened to Alan Kurdi. And I specifically wanted to think about his dad, who lost also his son Galib and his wife Rihana on that tragic day. And I also want this book to be not only a tribute to his family, but also to all the other refugees and migrants who've abandoned their home, who abandoned their communities, and taken this incredibly dangerous journey across the Mediterranean to reach European shores. Sea Prayer is not a novel. It's a short illustrated book that's beautifully illustrated by an artist named Dan Williams, who's based in London, and his work is really gorgeous. And I think you really like what he's done with the artwork, which is a beautiful match for the prose. And so the question from Jake is, how did the process of writing and publishing this differ from your previous books? So I think I addressed some of that already, and that this is a little bit of a departure for me because it's not a big novel, but in a way, the fact that it's quite short, you can really read it in about 5 minutes, but it packs a lot of emotions, I think, and it addresses a very big topic. And again, the artwork that's done by Dan Williams, who worked with me and who sent me his sketches, is just a beautiful marriage between the words and his illustrations. And so it's a little bit of a departure for me, but so far the feedback has been tremendous. So I thank all of you who read this book and who've written back to me. Elena wants to know if I have any advice for young writers. And my answer to that is read a lot. You should be reading all the time if you want to write. You should be reading books that fit. And one of the funny thing is that a lot of people tell me at book signings as I'm signing the book that they have a book in them and one day they're going to write it. But the fact is, if you want to write, you actually have to sit down and write. And I would suggest you write every day. Keep working on your craft. Don't worry about publishing. That's an entirely other endeavor. Just write from the heart. Write about what you know. Write what feels important to you, what you have passion for, what keeps you up at night, what troubles you, what excites you. And just put those words on paper and don't worry about the rest, but keep working at it. Nigu wants to know when I write, if I outline or just start. So I've never been into outlining. I just feel like it doesn't work for me. Conceptually, I really like the idea of having a plan and just kind of following it. But in practice, it all falls apart because I've tried it before. I've outlined chapters, and then when I actually start to write, I just stray completely off script. So after a while, I realized that outlining just doesn't work for me. And so I basically just start riffing every day. I have an idea or two about what I want to say. And I would say at least half the time I end up somewhere that I didn't expect to at all at the beginning of that day. But I have friends who outline, writers who outline really in great detail and are very good about following it. But no two writers work the same way. And that's an approach that just hasn't worked for me. Let's see. Mahima asks where I get my ideas from. That's a really hard question to answer because at the end of the day, I think so much of writing is informed by things over which we have little control from our subconscious. And so I don't really know what's under the hood per se, but I can't say that like all writers, my writing is informed by my experience. Sea Prayer certainly was informed by my work with the UN Refugee Agency. I've had a chance to go around the world and meet with people who fled war and persecution and who've had to restart their lives in another country. And that's a very deep and powerful experience that I've had the privilege to be exposed to. So all of my books in some way, shape or form have been informed by the experience of displacement, not only from the refugees that I've met, but also from my own since I came to the US as a refugee myself. Now and then an idea will just pop into my head. My third novel, And the Mountains Echoed, really began with a single image, which just kind of popped into my head. I'm not really sure where it came from, but it was this image of this man walking across the desert and kind of pulling one of those radio flyer wagons. And there was a little girl in it and there was a little boy following them. And I just kind of started exploring where that image went. And that whole book began with that very simple, really simple image. Syed wants me to describe my writing process. Okay, so I work during the day. I work from, I would say, about the time around 9 o'clock till about 3 or 4. I can't work around noise, so I tend to leave home because my dogs bark a lot. I can't work with music. I can't work when there's people walking around. I just don't understand people who work at Starbucks. So I have actually rented this tiny space as a little office that's really Spartan. It's basically 4 walls and a window that I actually shut. And it's got a desk and a table, and there's nothing in it. And so that kind of bunker-like isolation really works for me because there's no distraction, and I can just get about the process of working. A lot of my writing is sitting in front of the screen and I guess just worrying that nothing's going to happen that day. And there are times where I just write a paragraph or two. And there's, those days where I can get in a few pages. But no day is wasted because even on those days where I think I've accomplished nothing, it's kind of like building a callus, and everything builds on top of each other. So I don't worry about it too much. Let's see. This was a question about advice about writing. So Tracy's asking a really good question, and I really appreciate Tracy asking this question, which is, how can we help refugees? There's so many ways. One is, support organizations like UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency. It's an agency that's tasked with protecting the rights and well-being of refugees around the world. It's been around since 1950s, won 2 Nobel Peace Prizes. It's a tremendous organization. I've had the privilege of working with it since 2006. I've traveled around the world. I've met so many people, staff members who are incredibly dedicated people. So support an organization like UNHCR. But even within your community, there's so much you can do. If you know that there are refugees that have moved into your community, reach out for them. I remember when I moved to the States, how disorienting and weird and confusing it was to restart life in a place where you don't speak the language, where you don't know anybody, you're not familiar with the customs. So like even simple things like, applying for a job could be really confusing, or how to make a doctor's appointment. How do you get a driver's license? How do you use the public transportation system, online banking, paying bills. These are things that we all take for granted. We all know how to do. But for somebody who's newly arrived in the country, it's really confusing. It can be really hard. And a little amount of help can go such a long way. For you students out there, if you're in school and you have classmates or somebody in your school who's newly arrived from Afghanistan or Syria or another country who's a refugee, chances are they're really lonely and they don't have any friends and they're confused. So reach out to them and see if you can make friends with them. Ask about their culture, about their language, where they came from. Maybe ask about their experience of arriving in the US. If they're being bullied, stand up for them. If they need help with homework, maybe you can help out. I can tell you again from experience that even a tiny amount of help goes a long way. All right, so there's a question about UNHCR, which I think we already answered. Here, Greg wants to know what I miss the most about Afghanistan, and I think what I miss the most is I was 15 when I came to the U.S. I was 11 when I left Afghanistan, but it was enough time for me to have deep roots. And every time I go back to Afghanistan, when I fly, when the plane reaches the airspace over Kabul and I look down on the city below, I feel this tug in my heart because I remember that this is where I learned how to walk, how to talk. This is where I made my first friend, where virtually everything I know started here. So I have deep connection to Afghanistan. What I miss the most is that life was really rich socially. I grew up there in the 70s, and there was no television in Afghanistan at that time. There was very little radio, and so life revolved around people. And so we always ate dinner with family members who just kind of popped in and sat down, cousins and aunts and uncles. We were never alone. The idea of privacy and downtime was kind of weird in Afghanistan because downtime was like when you were with a bunch of other people and you were all just kind of hanging out. So that's what I really miss, is that kind of a really rich social texture to life. Meredith asks how I feel about the way we talk about refugees. And I think it's a really important question. There's a tendency I think, to talking about refugees as this community of people who always need help, who are a burden. And while it's true that refugees, people who've abandoned their homes, who have moved to a different country or even resettled in a country like the United States, do need help initially, and we should support them. But refugees have always been an enormous credit to their host communities. They have enormous resources and resourcefulness, I should say. Refugees are not opportunists. They're hardworking. The refugee ethos, and my parents were really good examples of it, is to be community-minded, to be really hardworking, and to not only strive to be self-reliant one day, but to become somebody who can give back to the host community that welcomed you in. And so you'll see in all walks of life in this country, refugees are in schools that teach, they become cops, they become lawyers, they become engineers, they help build homes. And there was a study done in 2015 that looked at refugees living in this country since 1975. It looked at over 3 million refugees. And what it found was that refugees pay billions of dollars in taxes that goes into the local economy. Refugee-owned businesses that year paid over $4 billion that goes into the building of schools and bridges and roads and all the things that we all benefit from as Americans.
So that was just Khalid Husseini that I really wanted all of you to have a listen to go and get the full interview. Please log into Facebook Live, Khalid Husseini, and you'll be able to listen to it much more. There are a few other really, really good links on the book where he's talking about it. It's this promotion that he was doing for the book that I feel would benefit the students. And so maybe these are things that you can encourage within the children to not only read the books, but to actually explore the author and their minds, because that really, really adds another layer altogether. On that note, Hurmat, over to you. I think it's about closing time, so we can just take our last comments and close the.
Mr. Asif or Mr. Vakar, would you like to say something at the end of the session? Since it was your, I think, first session attending our Book Clubs Across Borders session with Laghman, I hope you guys have some comments.
Yes, ma'am. Is here. I really enjoyed the session and the things that we have seen this session. These are the very informative things, and these are very important for our students as well. And such sessions must be going on because there are so many things that we are learning from these sessions. And the book that has been provided us, it is full of informative, full of information, full of emotions. The stories that is difficulties for the people who might come there to the other countries and pass the seas and tough routes that make their lives as well. And so many people lost their lives. And at last, I would like to say that actually I am attending this session on the behalf of Vakaraman Jamali, because he is not present here. Actually, he has some emergency. I am a head teacher here. But after attending this session, it is my will to continue your sessions in future as well. So I really enjoyed your session. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Sarvakar, for attending the session on your colleague, on the behalf of your colleague. And thank you so much for appreciating our work. And thank you so much for encouraging your students to read these books. So I would really advise you, I would really suggest you that please also show this video of Khalid Husseini's interview that Alia just shared with us, with your students as well. So they also get to know the author. They also get to know that how, because sometimes when you're reading the book, you have a different image of author in your mind. So when you see the author interacting, when you see the author talking in a conference or maybe talking somewhere live, you get the real image of the author. So thank you so much again, Laghman, for logging in. Thank you so much, Sarvakar and Sir Asif, for joining our session. And on this note, I'll end our. Sorry?
Hello?
Hello.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Sorry for interrupting in your conversation. Actually, I have a little bit curious about this opportunity and whole program. So I have just a little bit curious about that. We are associate with you and for the conversation with Afghanistan about the reading of the books. So I would like to suggest you, can we uh, have a good document between you and me that we are also part of the US Embassy and working with you? Is it possible or not? Because this is
Mr.
a whole conversation on a virtual session, depend upon virtual sessions and communication through telephonic. So we have
Yes.
no any evidence that we are really working with the embassy, US Embassy for
I'm
a
sorry, Mr. Asif, I'm
program.
sorry for cutting you off, but I'll call you up after this meeting in an hour, and then we can talk about this on the phone call. Okay? Is that okay? We'll
Okay.
talk about this in detail on phone.
Okay.
All right? So
Okay.
I'll end the conversation, I'll end the meeting here now. Thank you so much everyone for logging in. Thank you so much Laghman for joining in the session despite of all your constraints. So inshallah, we'll see you guys next month in June with a new book and new thoughts to talk about. Thank you so much everyone. Khuda Hafiz, have a nice day.